Hey guys, welcome back. It's been a minute since I made a video on the most hated champions in League, and it's only because I already covered 25 champions in the first 4 episodes. Knowing how the League community is, everyone has a deep-seated hatred towards every member in the roster. Yes, I'm sure there's someone out there who hates even Sivir or Xinjiao or Corki. Why? Who's to say? Either way, I think I have enough to squeeze out one more episode, and to be honest, I'm surprised I haven't mentioned any of them earlier. For today, we'll be going over 6 more champions that are disliked by a decent chunk of players. Having been a long time since my last episode, let me remind you that this series does not take the current performance of the champions into consideration. It's inevitable for League's most hated champions to carry a legacy of some sort, usually in the form of being oppressively dominant for a stretch of time, but a champion can just as easily be hated for the experience of having to play against them even if they haven't had the most impressive profile. I have another 6 champions to go over, so let's get into it. Really quickly, I have something important I want to talk about. I got a new phone, specifically the Red Magic 10 Pro, which happens to be our sponsor for today. You guys might recall I got the Red Magic 9 Pro last year, and they were nice enough to send me the newest model. As I'm sure most of you know by now, the Red Magic series is a line of smartphones known for having displays and performance optimized for gaming, and they just came out with the 10 Pro, the first phone ever to have a full 1.5K display paired with one of the strongest batteries a phone can carry, 7050 mAh to be specific. It also comes with a 1.25mm frame border and bezel with a 95.3% screen to body ratio, alongside a liquid metal cooling technology on par with gaming laptops. As you can tell by me showing the phone, it's got a really sleek design with a flat rear panel and no camera bumps, even without a case. The phone also comes with built-in shoulder triggers to give you more buttons to map when gaming. Speaking of gaming, this thing has a cooling fan that also turns on while running games, which you can see in the back of the phone. It actually looks pretty cool. To give you the best experience a mobile device can give, the Red Magic 10 Pro comes with a Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, a 144Hz display, and master-level audio quality speakers. There's honestly so much to go through, but point being, it's the best gaming phone, especially for the price. Able to run all kinds of mobile titles, from Wild Rift, Minecraft, Brawl Stars, to popular gachas like Genshin, Star Rail, Wuwa, ZZZ, all of which you can find in the game space, which is back once again. And there's even an AI assistant named Mora who can help you navigate all the features and plugins on deck. If you're still unsure as to what to get for Christmas, try asking for the Red Magic 10 Pro. You can use my link on screen or in the description. Thanks again to Red Magic for sponsoring the video, but for now, back on topic. Opening up with quite possibly the most hated champion of the recent generation, we have Gante. This guy is without question the most tumultuous balance history of any champion in the game in relation to the short time he's been out for. The guy came out 2 years ago and has been majorly adjusted more times than those who have been out for 5 times his tenure, to the point where the current version of Gante is a heavily watered down one compared to what he had when he first came out. It should come to no one's surprise what the source of his notoriety is. Now, I could just be boring and bring you the Showmaker copy pasta, but I actually want to talk about why it's so frustrating to deal with him. The main headwind concerning his design is that Riot tried to release a champion with the same defensive capabilities as a Warden who specializes in protecting himself and his team, and the offensive capabilities of a Skirmisher, someone who can duel and output consistent DPS against all manner of foes. It doesn't take a professional game designer to notice a lapse in logic. What balances a Warden's amazing defensive tools like the ones you see on Braum, Shen, and Taric is that they don't do that much damage relative to other classes. What balances a Skirmisher's ass-fucking DPS and mobility is that they crumble to pieces if you gang up on them or punish a subpar neutral game. Gante essentially neutralized the weaknesses of both parts of him. Being a Warden at base, he can build full tank and garner naturally high resilience, and then whenever it suited him, he could switch to attack mode and gun you down just as quickly as the 4 horsewomen of top lane. At the very least, and I can't believe I'm about to defend the class, the 4 horsewomen aren't sitting on hundreds of armor and MR and thousands of health, so if you poke them down and catch them off guard, you stand a chance at beating them. Gante can shrug off most if not all harass or surprise attacks against him in light of being a tank. The second issue is that Gante effectively had a strong trade combo that he could use twice, making him really hard to deal with when you accounted for the fact that he had both a trade combo and an all-in. Stacking armor and magic resist dropped his Q cooldown to be almost the same as Yasuo and Yana's Q. His E-Shield was innately a short cooldown, and Pathmaker used to reset upon casting his ultimate, so he could get a long-lasting knockback and stun, then get another cast of it which became a damaging ability. So while most people can match him blow for a blow in a short burst trade, Gante had 2 burst trades, making him extremely difficult to take down no matter who you were playing. You could rule out exploiting his poor effective range, as again he took virtually no damage. Realistically, the only thing preventing Gante from spiraling out of control was that he's hard to play. But in the hands of someone who did know how to play him, you had by far the strongest single champion in the game. This guy was insane. He's not as much of a nuisance anymore after they nuked his entire kit a few patches ago, but it's the same story as Yuumi, where despite being manageable, and I say that generously, the legacy Gante left behind in the short time he's been out for will be a permanent stain on his record. Prime Gante made Yone look fair. Speaking of another champion who is a complete war crime at her best, we have Gwen, a top laner and sometimes jungler who is such a freak of nature in her own right that people were entertaining the thought of replacing Irelia with her in the 4 Horsewomen. Contrary to the Horsewomen, Gwen's an AP skirmisher, one who may not have a modicum of hard CC in her kit, but frankly doesn't need one. At first glance, she has a simple premise: get stacks with autos before using Q and repeating the process. Now, in line of skirmishers being characterized for having situational defense, Gwen's defense may circumstantially be the strongest of any skirmisher, or rather any champion in the game. For all the backlash untargeted ability rightfully receives, there are a few rules that it follows to stay balanced, namely that abilities that make you untargetable have a very short duration and the cast is usually stuck in a fixed animation with a limited range of motion or activity. Master EQ, Zed Ultimate, Camille Ult, things of that nature. Gwen is, to my knowledge, the only champion in the game with untargetability that not only has a duration longer than most others, but offers her complete freedom to do whatever she wants. The caveat is that it's not unconditional untargetability. When fighting inside her friend zone, it instead gives her bonus armor and MR. All the same, Hollow Mist is one of the best defensive abilities in the entire game, not only making it challenging to fight her one-on-one, but also being the biggest middle finger to anyone who depends on range to apply pressure, as she can pop down her W and still threaten space while you have to either disengage or fight her up close and personal, which is just not an option for most mages and AD carries. Just that alone would be a nuisance, but Gwen's also one of the few skirmishers who can attack multiple targets at once thanks to her Q and ultimate, dealing huge amounts of percent health damage that also heals her in the process. She doesn't have quite the same tank busting capability as Camille and Fiora, nor can she AoE chain stun and one-shot entire groups of champions the way Riven can, but Gwen is definitely one of the more problematic champions to deal with. She is a passable neutral game for a melee, and a devastating mid to late game. She can dash every 4 seconds give or take, and built-in ability power not only increases her ability damage, but it also increases her healing, percent health damage, armor and magic resist on her W, and on-in magic damage on her E, causing her to scale exponentially over time to be one of the strongest skirmishers in the game. Fortunately for us, Gwen's balanced in power by the absence of proper AP bruiser itemization. If she was an AD champion with access to AD bruiser items, I can't even begin to imagine how strong she could be. Next champion is going to be Twitch, bit of a peculiar marksman, and one that forced you to play in a very counterintuitive fashion. Normally, the goal of a marksman is to keep all enemy champions at arm's length to ensure their safety and to output DPS. Twitch follows this playstyle as well and can easily top the DPS charts in a late game teamfight through spray and pray's massive range and splash damage, but rather than play like a traditional backline carry like Jinx or Kog'Maw, for reasons beyond my and most people's comprehensions, there appears to be a strange compulsion within every Twitch main to sneak around and find a flank angle, then unload on the entire enemy team even if it means being right next to them. I can't remember the last time I saw a Twitch main play him like a traditional ADC, especially after they gave him the option to go AP. If he goes down the standard crit route, he basically nukes you in a couple autos, whereas if he goes AP, no matter how tanky you are, because Deadly Venom deals true damage while Contaminate deals hyper damage, you have to sit there and watch your health bar slowly burn away. Either choice results in the same outcome. If he kills you, he can reset his ambush and run away if you're not able to stay on top of him. I can see how the existence of said ambush affords Twitch the liberty to play for a flank, but even when there's a safer way to go about it, Twitch players always disregard this support and search for opportunities to explode the enemy team right in their face or die trying. No clue why, but there's something weird about Twitch one-tricks that make them feel super toxic to play with or against. I don't really care much for the lore behind L9, but a lot of people associate Twitch with rad IRL and this less than above board behavior back in the day. But like with Shaco mains, whether it's because of the gameplay or just sheer coincidence, there's a lot of festering toxicity with Twitch. Our next champion is going to be Fizz. Giving due credit, I don't believe people harbor the same vitriol for this guy as we used to a decade ago. Back in 2015, the consensus would place Fizz in the top 5 most hated champions in the game, a statement that would be true to the present day, if not for the deluge of he's bad but they're even worse champions. Much like every other assassin, it's challenging not to be frustrated by someone whose entire purpose is to send you to the Shadow Realm in the blink of an eye. They hit you hard and fast with little if any method of recourse afforded to you to mount a response. Fizz particularly very much enjoys playing in the if any department. Through Urchin Strike and Playful Trickster, he's got a very simple and fast but deadly 1-2 combo, the latter of which has been legendarily memed on for being almost too good to be a mere basic ability. Earlier when discussing Gwen, I gave mention to how untargetability is normally kept in check by severely limiting what you can do while the animation's underway, ensuring that while your target won't be able to do much of anything, the same can also be said for you. Mastery is untargetable during Alpha Strike, but he's expected to appear at a fixed point, with, at least prior to 12.13, practically no input allowed from the player. Vladimir might be allowed to move freely, but Sanguine Pool doesn't do a whole lot beyond stall for time. The previously well-established and followed rules of untargetability bring into focus just how stupid Playful Trickster was, or rather still is. Fizz gets 2 dashes that can jump over walls, is entirely untargetable during the animation, and he can even decide whether to use it right away or delay it for a larger splash radius. Ultimately, the only thing Fizz can do with Playful Trickster is move until he lands, but the freedom of input is what made him such a problem. He is the biggest you to any champion whose entire method of survival hinges on stopping their assailant from moving or attacking, which encompasses almost half the roster. And while there are plenty other champs for people to get pissed off at nowadays, for the sake of posterity, I think it's worth giving at least a tribute to Fizz as one of the OG hated champions. This next one's gonna be my hot take of the video, but let's talk Heimerdinger. Practically no one would think to put him in their personal list of most hated champions if they were asked to name 5 off the top of their head, but I'm willing to bet you my mother's breakfast that if you were shown Heimerdinger and given a yes or no button, the vast majority of players would candidly say no. To no one's surprise, Yordles in general are known for gameplay that's tolerable at best and completely rage-inducing at worst. Heimerdinger is no exception. Depending on your pick, playing against Heimerdinger entails doing absolutely nothing for 20 minutes while he endlessly, relentlessly pelts away at you with his turrets. Melee champions in particular have it the worst. A good Heimerdinger will gaslight you into thinking you'll vaporize the moment you so much as try to walk up in CS. Taking out his turrets would be a worthwhile option to try out if he didn't constantly put down a new one the instant you destroyed them. Hard engaging against Heimerdinger is also ill-advised. If you get hit by a stun grenade, you'll be eating thousands of damage in the face by his upgraded W, or even if you try to gang up on him 2-1, the Apex turret effectively deals as much damage as an actual champion. Realistically, the safest bet against Heimerdinger is to play his game, that is, constantly chuck projectiles and long-range attacks at him the same way he does to you. Once again, if that option doesn't exist depending on who you're playing, you basically have to hope the Heimerdinger player is dumb enough to walk away from the safety of his turrets. In other words, he's a matchup check. You win or lose before you even enter Summoner's Rift. Having a Heimerdinger on the enemy team also comes with the unpleasant side effect of ruling out the option to face check brushes, since he has potentially the strongest depth brush combo in all of League of Legends. I'm also guessing a large part of why ADC mains dislike the guy is because of how easy it is for Heimer's support to grief you, so that only adds more fuel to the fire. On the subject of fuel to the fire, this little twerp has been written down on just about every player's hit list within minutes after coming out. Final champion will be Smolder. Though he may not come off nearly as obnoxious as most other 200 years champions, the source of agony and disdain for most people can be located within the type of playstyle he allows you to play. As both an evolver and an infinite scaler, Smolder acquires the benefits of both archetypes, which coincidentally happen to cancel out the weaknesses of each other. What keeps infinite scalers in check is the fact that whatever stat they can endlessly build up never addresses the fundamental weaknesses within their kit. For example, Nasus can have a billion stacks, but if he can't get in range to one-tap anyone, he may as well have none. What keeps evolvers in check is the fact that they're usually kept at a subpar level relative to champions without one, meaning they have to actively and continuously put themselves at risk to accelerate the process of evolving. Smolder bypasses the weaknesses of infinite scalers through his evolutions. Not only does he get more range, but he also gets more area coverage. Not only does he get more damage, but that damage becomes easier to apply. Not only does he do hybrid damage, but eventually the hybrid damage comes with a max held true damage burn and an execute threshold. Smolder then bypasses the weaknesses of evolvers by having the option to evolve without putting himself at risk, simply by last hitting minions or poking enemy champions, which compared to Veigar is much easier to do given how much range you get with Smolder's Q compared to Veigar's. You get free stacks, allowing Smolder to ignore interacting with the enemy laner and slowly but surely stack up. Unlike most other infinite scalers, Smolder comes with an actual mobility tool as well, adding another layer of safety to his early game. You essentially have a champion who is one of the most indomitable late games and yet has the means to reach that late game almost consistently. Obviously, following the mountain of nerfs, the odds of him reaching late game lean more on the side of no than yes, but in the few months he's been out for, he's been practically pick ban in pro play, while in solo queue he had a non-negligible presence in 3 roles with the same notoriety as Zeri during her prime. At the same time, he still comes with the same stereotypical liability that most of these other super late game champs have. I found Why I Like Muffins' explanation on Reddit to be a very succinct yet clear representation of how the player base feels towards him. When scalers are strong, they're despised for making games inevitable if they don't end, which in the case of Smolder is doubly true since he might be the best evolver and infinite scaler at the same time. It puts needless pressure on the enemy team to rush to win. At the same time, they're rarely strong early on and demand everyone compensate for their lack of power. Smolder may be able to survive the early game more safely than other infinite scalers and evolvers, but his overall presence early is still quite abysmal, causing people to dislike him when he's on their team. Conversely, the fact that he gets to scale without resistance makes it irritating for the enemy team, who, no matter how useless he may feel in the early game, instills that aforementioned pressure of he may suck now but we have to end the game in 30 minutes or it's GG. Though I will say to his credit, I feel like people find him more annoying than actually despicable, but I may be in the minority. Anyway, that concludes my hated champions part 5. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with any of my choices, or if you think there's a reason I forgot to mention regarding any of them. But for the time being, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you love to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Hated Champions episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.